I'm not a 3D printing expert. I'm a woodworker who's discovered that 3D printing for the workshop is super useful as well as being a lot of fun. I want to take you through the how, the what, and the why for bringing a 3D printer into the woodshop. Before you click off, let me ask you, do any of these sound like you? Why would I try 3D printing? I work wood, not plastic. Isn't 3D printing just about creating toys and art that doesn't have any functional value? I don't have time to learn all the geeky aspects of another hobby. I've already got one of those. If you'd asked me a year ago whether I wanted to try 3D printing, all of these would have been my answers. However, fast forward to now, and my views have totally changed. I have realized the value of having a 3D printer in the shop for making functional parts. I've also seen how modern printers take most of the tinkering away and pretty much let you get going straight away. So if you're curious about bringing a 3D printer into your shop but you aren't sure what you need to know or what sort of problems you can solve with printing, then this video is for you. Now, a useful way to frame the topic of getting started in 3D printing is to ask, what do I need to make the parts? Well, let's sketch out the key pieces to get a sense of the full workflow. At the heart of the workflow, there is of course the printer. While there is huge choice here, for woodworkers, there are really only a few worth considering. Alongside your printer, the next most important part is the plastic consumable or the filament that you use. Now, while there are loads of types of thermoplastic that you can use, and of course many brands, for the shop, we only really need to consider 3 to start with. With the hardware and consumables in place, the next piece is what you're going to print. These are called models and exist as digital files in a few different formats, where the models are either found and downloaded from a 3D model website, or you make yourself in CAD software. On the software side, there is one other piece that we need to care about, and that is what is called the slicer. This is software where you tell the printer how to behave while printing your model. So now that we have the 50,000 foot view, let's spend a few more minutes at a slightly lower altitude for each piece. First up, printers. When it comes to printer choice, I think it's a lot like the market for woodworking tools. In other words, a bunch of brands and some pretty vocal fanboys, much like with, say, Festool or Ryobi. Also, in a similar way to the woodworking choice between hand tools and power tools, 3D printers, for me at least, fall into two camps. There are printers where the build, setup and maintenance of the printer is half the challenge. And then there are the printers which you take out the box, turn on, and you're pretty much good to go. My recommendation for all woodworkers is to choose a printer that ticks 3 key boxes. It needs to print fast, ideally in the region of 250 millimeters a second, has a Wi-Fi connection, and the print bed is self-leveling. While these features do have a cost, of course, I would argue that without these, the experience of use will be at a level of friction where you simply won't use the printer. So which one do you get? Well, as I said at the start, I'm not an expert, but what I do know is that these 3 printers will give you a good experience. Bambu Labs P1S, the Prusa Mark IV, and the M5 from Anchormake. Prusa and Anchormake do have less expensive variants, but you will lose some of the quality of life features that I personally wouldn't be without. I have the Anchormake M5, and while it is for sure less repairable than the Prusa, I've had 0 issues from day one and have found the print quality to be good even at high print speeds. It's also pretty robust, as I found out the other day when I accidentally dropped a 10-pound fence on it, where the all-metal casing prevented me from having a very bad day. I will leave links in the description, but watch some other review videos as well before deciding. On to Filament, where to keep things simple, we only need to think about 3 types. First is PLA, which is your basic default material. It's easy to work with, pretty inexpensive, and has fairly good characteristics, although it is rigid and it doesn't like heat or sunlight. However, for use indoors where there isn't much stress being applied, it's a good option. Think lightweight tool holders like these for my push blocks. Second is PETG. This is a little bit more hard wearing, but also has a bit of flex in it, so works well for prints that need to move a little, like for example these hose clips. However, you will need to pay more attention with printer settings to get good results. PETG in particular also needs to be kept dry or dried out before use. Third is ABS. This is the most robust of the 3, and I use it for where there is more stress being applied to the part, like for example when I'm printing wall brackets for heavier tools. That said, ABS is also the most difficult of the 3 to print well. You'll need a print bed and a nozzle that is a lot hotter and a warmer environment to reduce the possibility of warping. Basically, you want your printer to be in an enclosure, which I'm planning to build for my printer very soon. It's worth mentioning that some printers come with enclosures or offer 3D printable plans for one. However, as a woodworker, I'm planning to just make one. Watch this space for that video. Getting models to print is probably the easiest part. There are a few web libraries where you can simply browse or search for what you need. Thingiverse, I think, was the original, but my favorite is Printables. It has a useful collections feature which appear in search results. So for example, I can type woodworking into the search and see collections that other users have made for their models. This alone will give you more ideas than you know what to do with. I also have one of these public woodworking collections that I will link down below, and it has a load of models that I rate as definitely useful. For example, one model I found that I want to print is this magnetic dust hose coupler. And if I go to the Files tab, I'll see that there are STL files. You might also find 3MF files. These are pretty standard model files which you can download to bring into your slicer. Before we have a look at the slicer, I want to briefly mention creating your own models. I know that many of you are already using software like SketchUp or Fusion 360 for your woodworking builds. Well, Fusion has the added benefit of being able to create 3D printing models pretty easily. For example, I have these setup blocks that I want to put on my cleat wall. So I just need to use basic sketching tools in Fusion to create a simple pair of brackets. From here, I can simply export as STLs ready for the slicer. I want to give a quick shout out and say thanks to my first Patreon supporter, Rob Nolan. If you're interested in supporting me and having your say in the direction of this channel, then take a look at my Patreon, link down below, where the first 20 founder members will get, amongst other benefits, free build and CNC plans for life. Okay, we've mentioned slicer loads of times, but what is it? Well, this kind of 3D printing is achieved by your printer laying down these thin, horizontal layers. The slicer does the job of translating your solid model into these layers or slices. Now there are quite a few different slicer applications. Most of the makers of printers have their own. In my case, the one from Anker, I didn't really rate, so I had a look at two alternatives. One is Prusa Slicer and the other Ultimaker Cura. These are both free to download and you can take a look at both if you want. For me, Cura was easier to move around and understand, so maybe start there. When you first load up either app, there is a setup process where you just need to pick which printer you have from the list. I found the stock printer profile for the AnkerMake M5 was a pretty good base to start with. You can then select which filament you're going to use. In this case, I have some eSun PLA+. Now we can load in a model, and I'm going to pick one of the sides of the magnetic dust hose coupler. With the model in a good position on the build plate, we can hit the slice button. This will generate a new file type called G-code, and we just need a place to save it. My workflow here with the M5 is to save the G-code to a cloud folder which I have access to on my smartphone. I then navigate to that file on my phone, download it, open the share menu, and send it to the M5 app, which I also have on my phone. This then sends the G-code over Wi-Fi to the printer, and the print will begin without me having to take any further action. The printer will first heat up, do a homing cycle, and then start printing. In this case, the part is pretty large and will take a while to complete. Generally speaking, it is worth keeping an eye on the first layer or two just to make sure it sticks properly to the bed. If it doesn't, then you'll need to increase the print bed temperature. However, for PLA, you're unlikely to have a problem. Saying that though, you also need to be careful if there is limited contact area between the model and the bed, or this can happen. However, this isn't a problem, as back in the slicer we can adjust bed adhesion from a skirt to a brim. And now rerun the print and learn the lesson for the next time. Printer calibration is a big topic, and much of it I've yet to get into, as most of the models I print are pretty simple. However, there is one small area of calibration I do want to show you, as it's helped me a lot with getting better results when printing PETG and ABS. What I'm talking about are called tower tests. These are tests which are great when dialing in a new filament. Let's quickly run these tests with PETG as an example. Over in Cura, we just need to go to Marketplace and search for Tower. We will then see Auto Tower Generator in the results, and we can hit Install. With Cura, you need to restart the app now to see the plugin. You would think that modern software doesn't still have these kinds of issues, but I guess Cura devs took a holiday on that day. So with Cura back up, we select our material, in this case, eSun Black PETG. And then we head over to Extensions, then Auto Towers. Here we are first looking at Temperature Towers, and choose the preset for PETG. Now we can see an odd looking model on the build plate. If we take a closer look, we can see temperature levels in Celsius. This is telling us that the temperature will start at 250 and then gradually reduce to 220. So let's slice this and get it printing. With the test done, it's pretty clear that the top level is best, which is 220. However, it still isn't perfect. Back in Cura, we head to Manage Materials, and we can see that the default temperature for eSUN PETG is much too hot at 245. So I'm going to create a custom version of this filament by duplicating it and setting the print temperature to 220. I might even go down to 215. With this modified temp in place, we want to do 2 more tests looking at retraction. Retraction basically handles how the filament is managed in the hot end. Badly configured retraction is one of the main causes of messy, stringy print results. If we go back to the standard eSUN PETG profile, we can see that default retraction distance is 3 mm and retraction speed is 60 mm. With these numbers in mind, we clear the build plate, go back to our towers, and using the same process, we first do a retraction distance test 1 to 6, and then a retraction speed test 35 to 75. As with the temperature test, we take the results from the distance test, update the settings, and then do the speed test with the new settings. On my printer, with this filament, I ended up adjusting the distance to 2 mm, but kept the speed at 60 mm. Generally speaking, what I suggest you try first is a test print without doing anything other than picking your filament type and see how it looks. For this, you can use a standard test model like a Benchy, but personally, I just printed something I needed and only did tweaks if something went wrong. So I think we've dealt with the what and the how. Now let's cover the why. Just to be clear here though, you don't need to get into 3D printing. However, if you follow my channel, you'll know that I'm a big fan of improving workflow in my small shop and using hacks to solve small problems. Well, for this kind of work, 3D printing is ideal. Let's take a look at a few of the parts I've printed and a couple of my own designs to give you some flavor. The first area that I got into is tool holders for my cleat wall. These can be super basic like battery clamps or wall mounts for my micro jig push blocks. I even printed wall mounts for my Centrotech chucks. Wall mounts can also be a little bit more involved, like these custom mounts that I made for my large engineering square and setup blocks that I mentioned earlier. If you're into cleats and wall mounting your tools, then the combo of wood and 3D printing is super flexible. Also, if you're thinking about cleats but aren't sure where to start, then check out this video that I have linked above and down in the description. Another interesting area where prints can be a cheap solution is work holding. For example, here we have a couple of corner clamps which can be used for getting boxes square and are a lot cheaper than alternatives from the likes of Woodpeckers. You can also print parts to make match fit clamps more flexible or simply limit the movement of your quick release clamps. Oh, and you know how removing dogs from your table can be a pain, especially in tiled old tops like this one? Well, there's a print for that too. As we saw earlier, prints can also help with dust extraction. Now when I set up my spindle sander, I can just use this magnet coupler and off we go. I've also found this super interesting model for a ball valve blast gate, which apparently has a lot better performance than these annoying aluminium ones. I'm going to try one of these out soon, and if it works, I'm probably going to replace all of my blast gates. If you have a ducting setup for your dust extraction, then printing your own splitters and branches would be a simple way to save money versus using metal. Shame I wasn't into printing 6 months ago. One more area that has a load of potential is jig making. Again, this can be super simple, like this right side cut jig for your track saw, or a little bit more involved, like this magnetized dovetail jig. Not to mention all of the templates that you could easily make up for your router. Want a simple bow tie jig? No problem. Don't like the one in printables? Make your own infusion. If you've got this far, then hopefully you now feel more clued up on what printing can bring to your shop. And if you decide to go for it, you've now got the basics to get started. Let me know in the comments if you're going to give it a go, and in the meantime, have fun with it, and I'll see you on the next one.